that's a good narrative for the global investor, people pulling back on dividends. Give us a context, Rob. You're dealing with a myriad of issues, rolling lockdowns, logistics, supply chains. What's been the biggest challenge in this turbulent COVID time to deal with? What's been the biggest headwind, and yet you still deliver?
Well, look, I think one of the biggest challenges that I think we have handled pretty well is how do we keep 107,000 team members across the Wesfarmers Group and our divisions engaged and safe in what is a really turbulent time. And we're really proud of the way our team members have stepped up to the challenge. We've made a lot of changes within our business to protect the health and safety of our team and our customers. And I think the results we've delivered this year are really a tribute to those 107,000 team members that have delivered them.
Robert, Australia now faces less of a fiscal cliff due to the JobKeeper program the government announced, but you're one of the biggest employers in Australia. How do you rate the government's response, as well as what do you see the outlook for the labour market in Australia?
Well, I think the federal government should be commended by moving swiftly, decisively with the launch of JobKeeper and the Job Seeker program. They have been very effective across the broader economy. They've made a real difference. I guess what we're seeing now, though, is that we are going to be in for the long haul with COVID. From my point of view, I think we're really in the first phase of COVID. And even if we were to get fortunate and see vaccines come into development in the new calendar year, that'll still take time to flow through. So I think the challenge now in our country, and probably similar challenge around the world, is how do we use every lever at our disposal to try and keep people in jobs, keep the economy going, keep investment going, and that ultimately goes to ensuring that there is sufficient confidence in households and business.
What does that mean for online? Presumably in closed down, lockdown, work from home, you saw a spike in online. Did that spike continue as you saw reopening? I just want to get a sense of stickiness of where you are with online and its propensity to move higher. As you saw reopenings, did that change? Just that narrative, Rob, really, I think is critical in your business.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. So firstly, it's really fortunate that over the last 3 years across Wesfarmers, we have invested heavily in our digital capabilities, and I'm pleased that we did. And we've also moved ahead leaps and bounds in the last 6 months, which has helped us through the lockdowns. I think there is no question that we are going to see a further acceleration of e-commerce and online. But what has been interesting within our business is that our stores have held up really well. And in fact, once the lockdowns and the restrictions start to ease, we've seen a significant increase in demand back in our stores. Now, ultimately, it comes back to what is the quality of the proposition you have in your retail stores. Now, we're quite fortunate that we have some phenomenal brands, well-loved brands, and really powerful offers. Bunnings, Officeworks, Kmart, just to name a few. And customers have been very keen to get back into our stores once the lockdowns start to subside.
Yeah, speaking of your stores, one of your biggest is a hardware store. And as Manus is saying, we saw this trend due to COVID-19 about online sales. We also see a trend of more home improvement. You've had a really good first half with home improvement and the retail and that kind of retail store. Do you think that trend will continue?
Well, look, we'd hope that some of that trend will continue. There's no question that as people spend more time at home, more time working at home, that has benefited businesses like Bunnings in the home improvement space and our Officeworks business as well. There's potentially been, you might argue that there's been some bringing forward of sales in some categories. We've seen a really strong demand in areas such as paint. Now, will that continue? Hard to tell. But as you probably also know, Australians love to travel, and they're just simply not able to travel at the moment. So what do you do on the weekends, and what do you do when you're spending more time at home? You go to Bunnings, and we've benefited from that.
I'm there with a paintbrush myself. Everybody that knows me knows I'm dexterous on a ladder and a paintbrush. Rob,
That's
true. you got the brands. Target, you're in this transformation zone, aren't you, in terms of the brands in the house? You got Target, which you're closing down some of those stores, converting them into Kmart. That transition, will the Target brand endure and survive as a brand, or will it be subsumed ultimately to Kmart? And the pace of that, I suppose, transformation, where are you on that?
Well, back in May, we announced a very significant restructuring of our department store businesses. And as you called out, we have a very successful and large-scale profitable group called Kmart, which in Australia is performing quite well, and then Target has been more challenging for us. So what we're doing is we're converting more stores over to Kmart to reinforce the strength and the profitability of that model. And then we're reshaping Target. So Target will become a more online-orientated business. It has a higher price point than the deep discount level of Kmart. But I'm still confident that over time the Target business will have a place in the market, but it ultimately will be a smaller business with a much stronger online offer.
Very quickly, Rob, I just want to ask you about the bushfires. I mean, COVID-19 has clearly now dominated 2020, but we cannot forget what Australia dealt with. Have you now taken on or changed any sort of your company policies to deal with the environment, given what we've seen happen in Australia?
Well, you're right. It wasn't that long ago that the bushfires wreaked havoc through many parts of our country. And look, it's worth remembering that a lot of those regional communities are still in the recovery mode, and our businesses are working hand in hand with them. It's also, I guess, the bushfires have raised a lot more focus in Australia on what are we doing around caring for the environment, reducing carbon emissions. Wesfarmers has already for many years been on a journey to reduce carbon emissions, and we are just going again. We're going again with better disclosure, clearer targets, and more initiatives to reduce the emissions and the emissions intensity within our businesses.